Good evening, ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties. This is Alex, coming at you from the underworld, and welcome back to another episode of... Before I get started, I would just like to let everybody know I'm probably not going to upload another video until the weekend of New Year's Eve because life is going to get really hectic with the holidays. And I would also like to take this opportunity, since we're going to be apart for a little bit, to wish my pagan friends and viewers a happy Yule. Also, for my Christian friends and viewers, I hope you have a Merry Christmas. And if you celebrate Kwanzaa, I hope you have a happy Kwanzaa. And last but not least, if you don't celebrate anything in particular, I hope you have a great holiday season.
I made some cookies.
Oh, those smell good. Are they...
What's wrong?
These are shaped like dicks. What am I supposed to do with these?
You eat them.
I eat them.
Yeah.
What kind of a person do you think I am? I'm not some raging pervert who just does nothing but eat dicks. What the hell is wrong with This weekend, I'm reviewing The 12 Frights of Christmas, which is a horror anthology composed by Isaac Asimov, Charles G. Waugh, and Martin Harry Greenberg. Now, as you might remember, this isn't the first time I've reviewed an anthology by Asimov, as I had previously read and reviewed his horror anthology called The 13 Horrors of Halloween. But as far as The 12 Frights of Christmas is concerned, I honestly had no idea that this book existed until one day when I was surfing around on thrift books and I happened upon it. And because of me enjoying The 13 Horrors of Halloween as much as what I did, I slammed my card down without a second thought. So a few days later, when the book did come in the mail, I wanted to read it then, but because of it being the middle of summer, I decided to be patient and just wait for December to come around. Which, as soon as the 1st of December came, I sat down and began reading, and I discovered that The 12 Frights of Christmas was a great companion to The 13 Horrors of Halloween. But without me rambling on anymore, let's go on and get down to the synopsis and see what kind of frights come along with the holiday season. The 12 Frights of Christmas is an anthology that provides a baker's dozen of creepy stories to read by the fireplace. And among the names listed in this book, we have authors such as Ramsay Campbell, Robert Bloch, Robert Louis Stevenson, H.G. Wells, H.P. Lovecraft, and the list continues. Which, because of the diversity we have here, the stories range from Victorian horror all the way up to future sci-fi horror. And among the subjects that these stories cover, we have tales that are about ghosts, homicide, aliens, elder gods, and the list continues well into subjects that are sure to make your Christmas not so merry and bright. The 12 Frights of Christmas was published in 1986, which was 3 years after the release of 13 Horrors of Halloween. With this holiday follow-up, Isaac Asimov explained in his introduction that the week of Christmas through New Year's represents the holiday season, where the world is full of good cheer. However, the holiday season is hard on many people, especially if they have no home to value. And for every joy of Christmas, there is also a fright of Christmas. Fun facts. Now that we know why this anthology exists, I would like to elaborate on the authors who provided my top 3 favorite stories in this book. And since The 12 Frights of Christmas is out of print, I have also included how you can easily get your hands on these 3 stories. Ramsay Campbell's story, The Chimney, received the World Fantasy Award in 1978. But this would not be his only award, as he received over 25 awards for his literature, and among those is the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Horror Writers Association. As for his writing, Campbell began writing stories as early as age 11, yet he would not begin selling stories until years later at the age of 16. Currently, Ramsay Campbell has over 30 novels and hundreds of short stories. And for those of you who would like to read The Chimney, this story is available in Campbell's short story collection called Alone with Horrors. S. Baring-Gould, also known as Sabine Baring-Gould, was a reverend famous for writing hymns such as Onward Christian Soldiers, and throughout his life he wrote over 1,240 publications. However, included with his writings, Gould wrote a book about werewolf lore. Also, he was famously known for his haunting collection of stories called A Book of Ghosts, and it is in this book where his Christmas horror story called Glaymere can be found. James Mcconnell was an American biologist and animal psychologist who published a few science fiction stories in the 1950s. Aside from the serious science articles that Mcconnell published in the Journal of Biological Psychology, he also published satire. And between the two, some argued they couldn't tell the difference between his satire and legitimacy. His short story, Life Sentence, can be found free of charge on Kindle ebook. Now that we have that covered, it's time to move on to the spoiler section, which, if you haven't read this book before, I'm about to reveal some things that could ruin the experience for you. And if you would like to skip this section, all you have to do is scroll down to the comments, and you'll notice that I have a pinned comment at the top. Once you see that comment, all you have to do is click the timestamp that's in it, and it will direct you away from the spoilers and bring you to the thoughts section. Now, you only have 17 seconds to do this, so ready, set, go! Since everyone's had the opportunity to click away, I'd like to talk about 3 of my favorite stories, which the first one that comes to mind is The Chimney by Ramsay Campbell. And this is about a young, nervous boy who hears weird sounds coming from his bedroom chimney. Also, on occasion, he sees the apparition of a charred corpse in his wardrobe mirror. Now, even though this already sounds pretty disturbing, the true horror doesn't come about until the end of the story, when we discover what this poor kid had been experiencing wasn't his imagination or a haunting. Instead, it was a warning. And what I love so much about this story was it kept me on the edge of my seat with me trying to figure out what was going on. Like, at first I thought the kid was having a fever dream, then I considered that maybe he was imagining it because he was so nervous, and at one point I thought maybe he was crazy. But when I got to the end of the story, I was like, I did not see that coming. And as far as stories that fall into the psychic horror subgenre, this was honestly the best one I had read since Daphne du Maurier's Don't Look Now. But as far as the second story that I really enjoyed, I loved the story Glaymere by S. Baring-Gould, which this takes place in the 11th century, and it's about a farmer who hires a man by the name of Glaymere to be a shepherd, which there's been some rumor that the farm is haunted, but Glaymere really doesn't pay that any mind because he's not superstitious or religious. So when Christmas Eve comes around, he goes out to watch the sheep as he normally does, but come the next day, Glaymere is found dead. So the people who find him want to bring him to hallowed ground so he'll have a proper burial. But they have some problems with bringing him to hallowed ground, so they just build a cairn where he lay. Well, after that, people start seeing Glaymere's dead body walking around, and the hauntings at the farm intensify. That is until a hero shows up who wants to stay at the farm despite the ghost stories that surround it. And while he's here, he discovers what it means to be afraid of the dark. And this story was so damn intense. I mean, yeah, we have this whole creepy folktale thing that's going on, but what I really loved about this story was the author knew how to use description. And what I mean by that is, check out this scene. Presently, the whole party were called together about a trampled spot in the heath, where evidently a death struggle had taken place, for earth and stone were tossed about, and the snow was blotched with large splashes of blood. A gory track led up the mountain, and the farm servants were following it when a cry, almost of agony, from one of the lads made them turn. And looking behind a rock, the boy had come across the corpse of the shepherd. It was livid and swollen to the size of a bullock. It lay on its back with the arms extended. The snow had been scrambled up by the puffed hands in the death agony, and the staring, glassy eyes gazed out of the ashen-gray, upturned face into the vaporous canopy overhead. From the purple lips lolled the tongue, which in the last throes had been bitten through by the white fangs, and a discolored stream which had flowed from it was now an icicle. Y'all, this dude knew what he was doing. Now, my third favorite story is Life Sentence by James Mcconnell. And unlike the other stories in this book that take place on Christmas or Christmas Eve, this one takes place on New Year's Eve. And it focuses on a man by the name of Ollie who's in a vegetable state. Which we eventually learn the reason why he's in this predicament is because when he was younger, he murdered his girlfriend and her lover on New Year's Eve. So because of that, he received a life sentence at the National Hospital of Observance. And due to the guinea pig experiments that they do here, we discovered that the death penalty would have been much more humane. Now, this story really freaked me the hell out because it deals with a subject that I am totally afraid of. And I know that this fear is completely irrational, but it is something that I've always been afraid of, which this is the subject of never being able to die. And what makes the story so frightening is we discover that Ollie has been suffering at this hospital for like 50 years. And every time he commits suicide or they give him some disease that'll kill him, they bring him back and continue experimenting. So yeah, this was totally a scared straight story because it just messed with my head. And as far as the subject matter is concerned, it made this story the scariest story in the book. But aside from the top 3 stories that I just spoke of, I really did have a hard time with narrowing down my selection because, in all honesty, there were like 6 stories that were really good. But since I only focus on like 3 stories in the spoiler segment, I'm going to cheat a little bit and talk about another one of my favorite stories in the tea time. I would like to talk about the story The Night Before Christmas by Robert Bloch. So this is about a struggling artist by the name of Arnold Brandon who's been commissioned out by this wealthy tycoon named Carlos so he would paint Carlos's wife Louise. Well, as Carlos goes out of town to tend to business and everything, Brandon and Louise, they end up doing the unskinny bop. But, of course, Carlos comes back early and catches them red-handed. And this is when Louise is like, you know what, I have had it, I just want a divorce, and she ends up making him leave his mansion of a house. Well, once he's gone, she goes on and moves her new piece of tail in, and they're having them a good old time. Well, as Christmas Eve starts to approach, Louise explains that she's never decorated a tree before. So she and Brandon go out, get a tree and decorations, and then Brandon decides that he wants to get her a surprise. So he goes back out and leaves her at the mansion. Well, when he returns, he discovers that Carlos has busted up in that crib, and he's decided to use his own decorations on that tree. Y'all, I'm just gonna say it. Rich people are a few fries short of a Happy Meal. And in particular here, Carlos is batshit cray-cray. And before you think I'm just picking on Carlos, let me say that nobody in this story is a saint. I mean, my God, Brandon has been covetous because he ended up sleeping with Carlos's wife. And then when he gets a taste of wealth, he kind of gets into this whole little entitlement mindset. And I mean, hell, even Louise, she tries to take everything from Carlos. So yeah, not anyone in this story is a saint. But also at the same time, Carlos is a power-hungry nut job who cannot take no as an answer. And my God, Louise, I don't know if your mama ever told you this or not, But if you have a man who has a short fuse with his temper, you do not bring up to him about his erectile dysfunction. And I tend to think that had that not been brought up, maybe he wouldn't have gone as batshit crazy. I don't know. But, you know, the thing is, Louise, honey, girl, if someone is having tallywhacker problems, don't bring it to their attention, especially if they're a nutcase and they have a machete mounted on the wall. Which, of course, Louise, this information is useless to you now. Out of the 13 stories in the 12 Frights of Christmas, 6 of those were amazing, and 2 of those were okay, whereas the remaining 5 just were not my cup of tea. And out of the stories that I would consider to be amazing, these are the ones that I listed in my Story Behind the Story segment, as well as The Night Before Christmas by Robert Bloch, Planet of the Fakers by J.T. McIntosh, and The Weird Woman by Anonymous. Now, as far as the okay stories are concerned, I would include Mark Hyam by Robert Louis Stevenson and The Festival by H.P. Lovecraft, which these stories more so lean towards the good than bad, so I would consider them to still be a good read, but there wasn't enough going on for me to actually put them in my top favorite. And as far as the stories go that I didn't care for, 2 of those were just way too sci-fi, and the other 3 I couldn't get into. So overall, this book does have more good stories than bad, and if you are wanting to purchase a copy since it's out of print, I honestly wouldn't spend no more than $10 because a lot of the stories in this book, you can find those in other collections or anthologies, so they're really not that hard to get your hands on, you just have to hunt around. But at the end of the day, there were some stories in this book that did scare me, and there were some stories that did creep me out. So overall, the book did its job. The 12 Frights of Christmas was a quick, fun, pulpy read that I'm happy to have in my library. And since none of the stories were really extreme, this book is suitable for most older teens and, of course, adults. And if you do happen to find a copy of this for a reasonable price, I do highly recommend it. On to the questions. My first question is, what is a holiday horror book that you would recommend? Load up the comments. My second question is, what is a dessert that you normally have at holidays that you absolutely love? Personally, mine is like this brown sugar bacon jerky. Pretty much, my great Aunt Carrie used to make it every Thanksgiving and Christmas, and it was so damn good. Like, I would just eat as much of it as I could, which is probably why I got the body I do now. But after she passed away, I had her recipe, so I continued making it in her honor. And once I became married, I started making this for my in-laws, which they absolutely enjoy. And as many of you recently know, my channel hit 500 subscribers, so I'm really grateful for that. I really do appreciate that. And as a present, I would like to give this recipe to you as a simple thank you. This is the email that my great Aunt Carrie had sent to my mother Sylvia, and as you can see, it was dated in 2002, but don't let that fool you because my great aunt had been bringing home the bacon to Thanksgiving and Christmas since the mid-90s. But between her recipe and mine, there's only one minor difference, and pretty much she says you use regular sliced bacon, hickory smoked is best, not thick sliced. Well, one holiday I accidentally got the thick sliced, and instead of going back to the grocery, I just decided to make do with what I had, and it turned out that you can use thick sliced bacon for this, and you don't have to adjust the heat of your oven or the time. So yeah, thick sliced totally works, and since I had that happy accident, I just stayed with the thick sliced bacon. But you just pour out golden brown sugar in a flat dish, you put each strip of bacon and press it into the sugar on both sides. I end up preheating my oven, which she doesn't say to preheat here, but I do the preheat. And you bake this in the oven at 350 degrees on a broiler pan so the fat will drip away. I always line the bottom of the broiler pan with foil because it makes a mess. That is true. It makes a lot of a mess, so be sure to line the bottom of that pan. And you bake it about 8 to 10 minutes. You turn the bacon, then bake it about another 8 to 10 minutes until it's golden brown and crispy. So yeah, this has always been a hit for my family, and I hope that this is something that you enjoy as well. Well, that's the recipe, and I cannot stress enough to line the bottom of the broiler pan with aluminum foil, because when you put the bacon on the top part of the pan and all of that sugary grease drops through the cracks, you're going to want something to catch all of that, and it will definitely save you a lot of time in the long run. Also, I'm going to post in the description section the recipe that I just mentioned so it can be right at your fingertips. But now it's time to move on to this weekend's meme, and if you would like to contribute to the next meme, all you have to do is just befriend me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, and whenever I post an image saying that you need to meme it, feel free to leave a caption, and the best one will receive a shout out here. This weekend, I decided to use the caption that Richard Laswell from Facebook contributed, which is, "Aren't those the magic mushroom cookies we made for Santa?" So thank you. That was something that really brightened my day, and I really do appreciate you watching. I hope you have a great holiday season. Well, now it's time to close out my video, but before I do, I would like to say thank you to Lisa G and J.L. Mulvihill, which J.L. Mulvihill is a young adult fantasy author, and you can find her books on ebook, print, and audiobook, so be sure to check her out. And if you're wondering why I'm giving a shout out to these wonderful people, it's because they have been able to contribute to my Patreon account. And if you would like to contribute to my Patreon as well, all you have to do is go to the description section of this video, click on the link that I provided, and for $5 a month, I'll give you a shout out. Which, if you would like for me to tie your profession to your name, just let me know, and I'll give you a shout out with that as well. And for $10 a month, I'll still give you that shout out at the end of my videos, but I'll also send you over a creepy photo because I do creepy photography on the side. I'll send this over at the beginning of every month, and after you receive it, you can print it off, do whatever you want with it. But if you're not able to contribute, no sweat. I just hope that you continue to come back to this channel so we can have a good time together. And if you would like to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, links for all of those are available in the description section. And if you have yet to subscribe to this channel, be sure to subscribe and click that notifications bell because I have more book reviews coming in the near future. And until we see each other again, I hope you have a wonderful holiday season and a happy new year and sweet nightmares.